The numbers were 80 to 120 million people on the biggest bathing day when I was there. So it's almost unimaginable. So Allahabad is like literally maybe the most sacred place in India in the sense that the Ganges comes down and the Yamuna River comes down, and there's a third underground river that's considered to be a sacred, subtle river that you can't see called the Saraswati. So the place where they come together is called a Triveni, and Triveni, or the Sangam. San means three, so where the three rivers come together. So the Kumbha Mela is mentioned in the Rig Veda 5,000 years ago. It talks about the meeting of the blue and the white water. The Chinese explorers who came to find Buddhism in India came in 630 AD and were the first people to write about the Kumbha Mela. And Mark Twain came in 1895. And David Feast came in 2001 and again in 2013. So I'm going to show you pictures from two Kumbha Melas, and they were both very different, and I'm going to give you a sense of that. So this is an astrological event that happens. It's chosen at a particular time, and the bathing days are what really people pay attention to. They're made up by the astrologers. So the big bathing day that I was at was February 10th, which was considered to be the Big Daddy in 2013. And the one in 2001 was called the Maha Kumbha Mela. It wasn't going to happen again for 144 years. So literally the last one before 2001 was just after the Civil War. And the next one is a long ways away. And everybody knew, so everybody came to jump in the water. So on February 10th, there were 80 to 20 million people. And it was radical. So that's what we're going to talk about. So we're going to move out of this dream state, and I'm going to take you on a magical mystery story. And you're going to see stuff that even if you went to the festival, you wouldn't get to see. So the first time I was at the Kumbha Mela in 2001, I stayed in the Babaji camp. And this is a fabulous picture of Babaji. He appeared in a cave in Harakan near Haldwani in northeastern India in 1970. And when he appeared, he didn't even know how to talk. And they pulled him out of the cave, and then he went up on a mountain that was called Little Kailash, and he sat for 45 days without moving. Something like 40,000 people appeared out of nowhere just to see him. It was just a phenomenon. This is sort of the idea of theater, where every Indian child dresses up. Okay, they all play the god. So they're playing Krishna and his consort Radha, and they're on top of a float. So this is the first guy that I met, and if you could blow up the picture that he's holding, he's actually holding about maybe 80 pounds of bricks with his lingam, his penis. And he's kind of separating the men from the boys, so to speak. And it's quite an amazing feat. They think that sometimes it's to show your power, and sometimes it's to break the sexual nerve in the body. And so this was his camp, and I was like, I had gotten like within a couple of 100 meters of my camp, and we just went off just like that. It was like a complete fantasy. We went off to his camp on the side of the hill overlooking the 500,000 tents, and we just hung out. And then as it got dark, I realized I better go find my camp. People build displays of the different goddesses, and they put up signs. It's a lot like in the old days, let's say in Chartres Cathedral or Strasbourg or Reims, they had stained glass windows that were educating people about the history of the Bible because everybody was illiterate. This is what I looked like in 2001. And what happened was after I hung out with this guy, I realized it was getting really dark, and I couldn't find my camp, and I was like literally maybe 20 feet away from my camp, and I couldn't find it. And I saw one guy, and I said, oh, he speaks English. So I went and asked him, and then I found the door, and there was a guard, and as soon as I opened the door, I was safe. You're protected by walls. The camp's dialed out. They have food. They have altars. They have fire pits, and a whole lot of wonderful people, and a resident teacher, Muniraj. This is Durga sitting on the lion. And this is all just to soothe your eyeballs, just so you see beautiful things. Because the Kumbha Mela is just nothing but color. This is the fire pit at the camp. One thing that Babaji did extremely well and Muni Raj did extremely well was fire ceremony. So if you remember, I said that Brahma did the first yagna, the first fire ceremony at Prayag, at Allahabad. Everybody at the Kumbh Mela is doing fire ceremony. By the hundreds of thousands of fire ceremonies, reciting all the divine chants of the Vedas and praying and meditating and reciting mantras, and all the great teachers are there, so there's a huge energy. These are two very serious sadhus from the West, and they're just hanging out. Really relaxed people. There's no stress. You know, once you're in your camp, everything's relaxed. This is me in the river doing my prayers and relaxing and in the Ganges. Some people think that when you bathe, particularly on these auspicious bathing days, that you bathe away all your sins and all of your karma as well. And people know that. And you're going to see crowds everywhere, just people moving around. This sadhu is smoking a chillum. This is a really serious chillum. It's one of the longest chillums I've ever seen. It's packed with hashish and tobacco, and you have to have the lungs of God to suck on it. And the next picture you'll never see again. So the marijuana and the hashish is considered seriously holy to Shiva. And, you know, it's considered to be a drug here, and people are heavily persecuted for it. But in India, it's widely available to the holy people who want to be up in the Himalayas in the cold. And it's really considered to be a vehicle for consciousness. There's music everywhere. There's parades everywhere. This is the sadhu by his fire pit. He's holding what's called a chimta. Every sadhu has a chimta. It's like a piece of metal that you would poke the fire with or chase monkeys away with. This guy's lying in the middle of the street on thorns that would put my acupuncture needles to shame. And he's just showing his powers, and people will leave money for him. So this gives you some idea of what's going to happen at the Kumbh Mela. You know, that there's people and they all want to bathe on the same day. And you know, if you're like really have enormous intention and you're willing to do battle, or you're in a parade, or you're within a big guru, there's a certain place in the Sangam where people go to bathe. And I actually was there when the Dalai Lama came in 2001 and put his foot in the water. So it's huge. So when we're trying to find out why people go to India and why people go to find these teachers, is that they're literally, sometimes it's a reincarnation transmission, and sometimes it's a mind-to-mind transmission, like in the Zen tradition. They call it the passing of the lamp. You know, basically they wake you up by your association. So part of this was that they would pick up and they'd put everybody on buses, and you would go to a big event. And the big event, you know, this is the event that all the great teachers at the Kumbh Mela, not all of them, but a lot of them showed up at. And the man on the right is the likely possible successor to the central teacher here, to Swamiji. And this was just one of those moments. You know, I have to confess, you know, I had a tiny little camera. I was very irritating. My telephoto was broken, you know, and I came up, and when the teacher gives you a transmission picture, you know, it's just a lovely thing. You know, he could have just talked to somebody or whatever, and he really met me in my photographic world here, so I could meet you with him. You see how beautiful he is. This is what the whole Kumbh Mela looks like lighted up at night. Very dramatic. And this was the second big outing that I did. We went to see a teacher named Prem Baba, who's in white here. And there's the central teacher is, he has a big ashram in Rishikesh. Both Prem Baba and he are from Rishikesh. And they've formed an alliance to clean up the Ganges and the Yamuna River. And they're really in terrible shape. They showed a movie on the Yamuna River. They say the Yamuna River is a dead river. There's not an ounce of oxygen in it, and it's heavily, heavily polluted. 90% of the pollution comes out of Delhi. These guys are really active, and they're moving, they're politically connected, and they're bringing in money, and they're taking action. So I'm on my way out, And so this was a mudra at the airport, sticking out of the wall. It's probably about 5 feet tall, 6 feet tall. And then I found a picture I've been looking for a long time. This is when I spoke at the World Peace Conference. That's what all this Kumbha Mela and everything is about. It's about world peace. It's about bringing people together and freedom and unity and love and service and compassion. And this year, more so than ever, about the environment, that they're really starting an environmental movement. Anyway, that's the Maha Kumbha Mela. It was a joyous thing for me, and for me to bring it to you, I can't tell you what a joy it is, and I thank you.